LeBron James surprises young athlete with a full scholarship, saved him from being kicked out of school. LeBron James was sitting in the front row of the gymnasium, the crowd buzzing in excitement as the final buzzer sounded. The tension in the air was thick as the gym erupted into applause. But LeBron's attention was fixed on one young player, Jason Miller. The boy was limping off the court, his face a mixture of exhaustion and frustration. LeBron had been watching Jason for the past few games, and despite his injuries, Jason's determination had stood out to him. Jason had been a star player for his high school basketball team, but lately, things had been falling apart for him. A few weeks ago, his coach had noticed that Jason's grades were slipping. He had always been an excellent student, but now, with the pressure of practice, games, and trying to make a name for himself, his schoolwork had started to suffer. Worse, his family was struggling financially. Jason had come from a background where his parents couldn't afford to pay for his tuition anymore. The school had already warned him twice about being kicked out if he didn't pay up. Jason had tried everything to raise the money. He took up part-time jobs after school, but it wasn't enough. His basketball scholarship was his only shot at a better future, but now it was slipping away. He had no idea that one of the greatest basketball players in the world was watching him closely, quietly plotting to change his life forever. Just as Jason tried to shake off the pain in his leg, the principal, Mr. Henderson, walked up to him with a stern look on his face. The news was not good. Jason's family still hadn't made the necessary payment. The school had decided to pull this scholarship, and Jason had just hours left before being officially kicked out. Jason's heart sank. He knew his future was slipping through his fingers, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. But as he turned to walk away, he saw LeBron standing at the edge of the court, motioning for him to come over. Jason couldn't believe his eyes. What was LeBron James doing at his high school game? He had heard of athletes visiting schools, but LeBron? He never expected anything like this. LeBron smiled as Jason approached, his large frame towering over the teenager. "You all right?" LeBron asked, his voice calm and reassuring. Jason could barely speak. His throat was tight with emotion. The idea of being kicked out of school, of his dreams falling apart, made him feel small. But LeBron's presence somehow made him feel hopeful, even if it was just for a moment. I don't know what I'm going to do," Jason managed to say, his voice cracking. LeBron nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "Well, I've been watching you, Jason," LeBron said, his voice steady. "I see a lot of potential in you. You've got the heart of a champion, and that's the kind of thing that can't be taught. But you're not alone in this. I'm going to help you out. We're going to make sure you finish school and continue to chase your dreams." Jason's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. LeBron James, the player he had looked up to his entire life, was offering to help him. Jason's eyes widened as the reality of the situation began to sink in. He had no idea what LeBron was planning, but he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. But before Jason could respond, Mr. Henderson, the principal, approached them with an urgent look on his face. "LeBron," Mr. Henderson said, his voice shaking with excitement. We were just about to let Jason go. We don't have a choice. His family hasn't paid the tuition, and we're running out of time." LeBron raised a hand to calm him down. He turned back to Jason and gave him a reassuring smile. "I've got it covered," LeBron said confidently, his eyes locked on Jason's. Jason felt his stomach drop. Was this really happening? Was LeBron really going to pay for his tuition? Or was this just some kind of misunderstanding? LeBron turned to Mr. Henderson, his face serious. "Mr. Henderson," LeBron said, "I'm going to pay for Jason's tuition. Full scholarship. No strings attached." Jason couldn't believe it. His mouth went dry, and he stared at LeBron, trying to process the words. A full scholarship. Was this really happening? Mr. Henderson blinked in shock. He looked from LeBron to Jason, then back again, as if he were trying to figure out if this was some kind of dream. You're serious?" LeBron nodded, his smile widening. Dead serious. The crowd in the gym, who had been listening to the conversation from a distance, began to murmur. Jason felt his knees weaken. He had no idea how to react. This was everything he had ever wanted, but it felt too good to be true. "I'll take care of everything," LeBron continued, his tone final. "Jason's got a future ahead of him, and I'm not going to let him lose it because of something like money. Jason's eyes filled with tears, and he couldn't hold them back any longer. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope. Just then, LeBron turned to Jason and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're going to make it, Jason. Trust me." Jason nodded, barely able to find his voice. "Thank you. Thank you so much." LeBron gave him a gentle smile, then looked at Mr. Henderson. "Let's make sure Jason gets everything he needs. No one's kicking him out of this school. Not on my watch." Mr. Henderson's voice wavered as he spoke. "Of course. We'll take care of the paperwork immediately." As the conversation continued, Jason stood there, feeling like he was in a dream. How had this happened? He was about to be kicked out of school, but now, he was being given a chance he'd never thought possible. The full scholarship was a lifeline, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on. Why had LeBron stepped in for him? What did he want in return? Just as the excitement of the moment began to sink in, Jason felt the weight of the situation creep back into his mind. He had always dreamed of playing basketball professionally. But would he be able to live up to the expectations now? Would he be able to take this opportunity and turn it into something greater? And then, just as the moment of hope was overwhelming Jason, another voice interrupted him. "We'll see how long this really lasts." A cold, sneering voice came from behind. Jason whipped around, his heart racing. It was Kyle, one of the popular kids at school who had always looked down on Jason. Kyle smirked. "You think a scholarship from LeBron is going to save you? You're just a charity case. Nobody's going to remember you. They'll forget you as soon as the next big thing comes around." Jason felt a surge of anger rise in him. But before he could say anything, LeBron stepped forward, his towering figure casting a shadow over Kyle. "Don't worry about him," LeBron said, his voice calm but firm. "You've got what it takes, Jason. Let the haters say whatever they want. You're going to prove them wrong." The crowd fell silent as the tension hung in the air. Jason didn't know what to say. He wanted to argue with Kyle, but LeBron's words calmed him down. LeBron had his back. But as Jason glanced back at Kyle's smug face, a new doubt crept into his mind. Was this just the beginning of the real challenge he would face? Jason stood there in a daze, caught between the disbelief of what had just happened and the gnawing fear of what lay ahead. LeBron James had just offered him a full scholarship, a lifeline that he hadn't dared to hope for. And yet Kyle's mocking words echoed in his head, casting a shadow over the excitement. A charity case. Jason felt his fists clench involuntarily. What did Kyle know? He wasn't just getting a handout. This scholarship was a chance to prove himself. LeBron must have sensed Jason's unease, because he gently placed his hand back on the teenager's shoulder. "Forget about him," LeBron said, his voice steady but full of encouragement. "Kyle's got his own issues. You focus on what's important, your future." Jason nodded, though the weight of Kyle's taunt hung heavily on his mind. Was LeBron right? Could he really shake off the negativity that followed him everywhere? Or would this be just another dream that would eventually fade away, just like so many others? The crowd, still buzzing with excitement, slowly began to disperse, but the tension in the air wasn't lost on anyone. Jason turned toward Mr. Henderson, who was watching them with a look of awe. I don't know what to say, LeBron," Mr. Henderson said, his voice shaking with gratitude. "This is unbelievable. We will get the paperwork started immediately. You've changed this kid's life." LeBron smiled, giving a nod. "It's the least I can do. But Jason's the one who's going to make the most of it. I just want to make sure he's got a fair shot." Jason still couldn't believe it. His head was spinning. He wanted to say something, to thank LeBron properly, but the words felt stuck in his throat. All he could do was nod, his eyes starting to well up again. The weight of everything, his struggles, his fears, his dreams, was crashing down on him all at once. "Don't worry about it, Jason," LeBron said with a knowing smile. "Just keep working hard. Show them who you are. That's what it's all about." Jason swallowed hard, trying to compose himself. "I won't let you down. I swear." LeBron nodded again, giving Jason one last look before turning toward the exit. "I'll be in touch. Keep your head in the game, all right?" Jason watched as LeBron walked away, the crowd parting for him as he exited the gym. The weight of the situation began to settle in. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about his future, about the dreams he had worked for, and about proving to himself, and to everyone else, that he wasn't just a charity case. But as Jason turned back toward the court, his eyes found Kyle again. The boy was talking to his friends, laughing as if he had just won some kind of victory. Jason felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. But it wasn't the same feeling he had when he first heard Kyle's taunt. Now, it was something deeper, something more determined. Jason was going to show them all. He wasn't going to be the kid everyone looked down on anymore. LeBron had given him a chance, and he wasn't about to waste it. But just as he made his way off the court to head home, he heard Mr. Henderson's voice calling out to him. "Jason, wait up." Jason stopped, turning to see his principal jogging toward him. Mr. Henderson looked serious, but his face was filled with something else. Concern, maybe even a hint of worry. "What's up, sir?" Jason asked, his stomach twisting in anticipation. Mr. Henderson caught his breath, then looked at him with a sigh. "I hate to do this to you, Jason, but there's one more thing we need to talk about." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "The scholarship, the money," Mr. Henderson began, running a hand through his hair. "While LeBron's offer is incredibly generous, the school still needs to process everything. It's going to take time to get the paperwork in order. In the meantime, you can't stay on the team until everything's confirmed." Jason's stomach dropped. He had thought everything was finally falling into place. But now this. "What? You're saying I'm off the team? After all that, I can't even play." Mr. Henderson's expression softened. "Not forever, but until everything is official. You won't be able to participate in any games or practices. We don't have the funding for a student who's not officially enrolled. You'll still have your scholarship, but it's just a formality, Jason. It's all about the paperwork." Jason felt his knees weaken. Was this just another setback? How long would it take to get everything sorted? And in the meantime, what would he do? His entire future felt like it was dangling on a thin thread. "But I need to play," Jason exclaimed, his voice rising in frustration. "The team, my teammates, they're depending on me. I've worked so hard for this, and now I can't even play." "I know it's not ideal," Mr. Henderson said quietly, "but it's just temporary. You'll be fine, Jason. Just keep your head down, stay focused, and everything will fall into place." Jason wanted to believe him, but it was hard. He had already felt like he was on the verge of being kicked out of school once before. Now, it seemed like the school was pulling the rug out from under him again. Mr. Henderson placed a hand on his shoulder. "Look, LeBron's invested in you now. You're not going anywhere. Just make sure to stay in class. Stay on top of your work, and you'll be back on the team in no time." Jason nodded, though he wasn't sure how he was supposed to keep his focus on school when basketball was slipping away from him again. He had no idea how long the paperwork would take. And without playing, what would happen to his reputation on the team? Would they forget about him too? As he made his way out of the gym, Jason's thoughts swirled in confusion. He had a scholarship now. Yes, but it felt like there was a giant wall in front of him. One he couldn't get around no matter how hard he tried. And just as he stepped outside into the cold air, trying to clear his mind, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from his mom. "We need to talk when you get home. It's important." Jason's heart sank. What could that possibly mean? After everything that had just happened, was there more bad news waiting for him at home? He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever was coming next. Just when he thought he had a break, it felt like the world was about to throw something else at him. Would it ever end? Would he ever catch a break? Jason's phone buzzed again, and this time, he hesitated to look. The text read, "Please, Jason, don't make any decisions without talking to me first." Jason's stomach twisted. Whatever was happening now, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Jason walked slowly, his feet dragging as he made his way to the parking lot. His phone buzzed in his pocket again, but he ignored it this time. The cold air felt sharper against his skin, the weight of the day pressing down on him. After LeBron's incredible offer, he had hoped for some relief, but instead, it seemed like new challenges were emerging from every direction. First, the issue with the team. Now this strange text from his mom. He had no idea what to expect when he got home, but he knew it wasn't going to be good. He climbed into his old car and started the engine, the low rumble of the motor almost comforting as he pulled out of the parking lot. His thoughts were still racing, trying to make sense of everything. LeBron had offered him a scholarship. That much was clear, but the uncertainty about when he'd be allowed to play, and now his mom's message. It was all too much. By the time Jason pulled up in front of his house, the sun had nearly set, casting long shadows over the quiet street. The lights in the house were on, but everything felt strangely still. As he stepped out of the car and made his way up the driveway, the door opened, and his mom appeared in the doorway, her face tight with concern. "Jason, we need to talk," she said, her voice unusually soft. Jason could see the worry in her eyes, but he couldn't place what was bothering her. They had always been close, but lately it seemed like she had been carrying something heavy, something she wasn't sharing. He swallowed hard, bracing himself for whatever was coming next. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, his voice shaky. "You said it was important. Is everything okay?" She stepped aside to let him in, and Jason walked into the living room, where his dad was sitting on the couch, looking as serious as he had ever seen him. His dad wasn't the emotional type. He usually kept things bottled up. But tonight, his face was drawn, tired. "Sit down, son," his dad said, his voice unusually soft. Jason's heart started to pound. His parents hadn't acted like this in years. Whatever it was, it couldn't be good. "Jason," his mom began, taking a seat next to his dad, "I've been holding something back from you, and I didn't want to tell you until I had to, but we've run out of money." Jason's breath caught in his throat. He thought he had heard her wrong. "What do you mean? We're out of money. How is that possible? You've been working so hard." "Jason," his dad interrupted gently, "we've been trying to make ends meet for a while. Your mom and I, we're struggling. The bills are piling up, and your tuition, it's more than we can manage right now. That's why we haven't been able to pay the school." Jason felt like the floor had just dropped out from under him. He had known things were tough, but hearing it from his parents was different. This wasn't just a small setback. This was the harsh reality of what his family had been hiding from him. I don't understand," Jason stammered. "If I don't have the money, what happens to me? What happens to my scholarship? What about everything LeBron said?" His mom cut him off. "LeBron's offer is generous, but that doesn't change the fact that the school needs the money up front. Until the paperwork is cleared, they're not letting you back on the team. Without the school's blessing, you can't play, and without playing, you're nothing to the recruiters. Your future depends on the team." Jason's heart sank. Everything had seemed so perfect just hours ago. LeBron's offer had felt like a dream, but now it felt like it was slipping through his fingers again, as though nothing would ever go right. His dad spoke again, his voice tinged with regret. "Jason, I know this is hard, but I want you to know, we're doing everything we can. Your mom and I are looking for extra work, but it's going to take time." Jason wanted to say something, to argue, but the weight of their words crushed him. He couldn't ask more from his parents. They were already doing all they could. The reality of his situation hit him harder than ever before. "What are we going to do?" Jason asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're going to figure it out," his mom said softly, "but we need you to focus on staying in school and keeping your grades up. If LeBron really wants to help you, we need to make sure you're doing everything you can to deserve that help. It's the only way out of this." Jason nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. Could he really keep his grades up, balance all this pressure, and still play basketball? The one thing that had always been his escape now felt like another burden. He didn't know what to say next, so he just sat there, in the silence that filled the room. His parents' words were heavy, and he knew they were right. But something about the situation felt wrong, like there was more to it. LeBron had promised him a chance, a full scholarship, no less. But what if that wasn't enough to fix everything? What if the promise of a scholarship couldn't solve the problems his family was facing? He glanced up at his parents, but neither of them could give him the answer he needed. They didn't have it. They didn't know what would happen next, and neither did he. Suddenly, the phone rang, breaking the tension in the room. Jason jumped, then quickly grabbed the phone from the table. It was a local number he didn't recognize. "Hello," he answered, his voice shaky. "Jason." The voice on the other end was unfamiliar but firm. "This is from the admissions office. I'm calling about your scholarship. We need to finalize some details, and we're still waiting on some paperwork from your end. Can you come in tomorrow to meet with us?" Jason's stomach churned. It was the last thing he needed right now. More uncertainty, more waiting. I can come," Jason said, his mind racing. "What time?" "First thing in the morning. We need to make sure everything's lined up before we finalize your spot on the team." Jason didn't even know what to say. He wanted to ask more questions, but the call ended abruptly, and he was left staring at the phone in his hand, more confused than ever. Mom, Dad, they want me to come in tomorrow, but I don't know what that means. They said something about finalizing my spot on the team. His parents exchanged a glance. His mom sighed. That's what we were afraid of. They don't want to confirm anything until the money's sorted. Without that, you're not officially a student. Jason clenched his fists, the anger and frustration rising again. This isn't fair. I worked so hard, and now it feels like I'm back at square one. I don't know how to fix this, how to make everything right. His dad stood up and walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. We'll fix it, Jason. We'll get through this. But we need to stay focused, and you need to make sure you're keeping up with everything. Your grades, your health, your future. Jason looked up at his dad, seeing the determination in his eyes. It was the same determination he had seen in LeBron's eyes earlier, the kind that pushed you to keep going even when everything seemed impossible. He nodded, trying to swallow the panic that was rising in his chest. I'll do my best. I'll figure it out. But as he looked out the window, watching the last traces of sunlight disappear behind the trees, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still to come. As the night went on, Jason lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind kept running in circles, his thoughts tangled with the weight of everything. The scholarship, his family's financial troubles, the pressure to succeed. It all felt like it was closing in on him. Was he strong enough to make it through? Could he live up to the expectations that seemed to be growing by the hour? And what about the meeting tomorrow? What would the admissions office say? Would LeBron's promise really be enough to hold everything together, or was this just another broken dream that would slip through his fingers? He didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. Tomorrow would decide everything. Jason couldn't sleep. The hours stretched on, each minute heavier than the last. His mind raced in circles, unable to find rest or peace. The scholarship, the meeting at the admissions office, the phone call from his mom. It all swirled together in a chaotic blur. He kept picturing the moment when LeBron had offered him the scholarship. It had felt like the answer to all of his problems. But now, with everything hanging in the balance, that promise seemed distant, almost unreachable. The room around him was dark and quiet, but Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to happen. Something big. He wasn't sure if it was good or bad, but he knew it would change everything. He had to get it together. He had to focus, at least for the meeting tomorrow. When the alarm blared through the quiet of the morning, Jason jolted awake. He had barely gotten any sleep, but there was no time to waste. Today was the day everything would either fall into place or fall apart. He rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the grogginess, and climbed out of bed. The house was still silent, everyone still asleep, and Jason had no desire to wake them up. He needed to deal with this on his own. After a quick shower and some breakfast that he barely tasted, Jason grabbed his jacket and headed out the door. His car felt heavier today, like it was carrying the weight of everything that had happened over the past few days. He drove in silence, the world outside seeming far away, as his mind ran over the conversation from last night. The meeting at the school was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. He'd been told to arrive early, so he was pulling into the parking lot just before 8:30. The place seemed quiet, still, as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. The building was the same as always, but to Jason, it looked different. Today, it felt like the walls were closing in, reminding him of everything that was at stake. He parked his car and walked toward the entrance, his steps echoing in the empty hallway. The admissions office was just around the corner, and when Jason entered, the receptionist looked up at him with a polite smile. "Hi, Jason. You're here for the meeting, right?" she asked, checking her computer screen. "They're expecting you. Just take a seat. They'll be right with you." Jason nodded, though he could barely find his voice. He sank into one of the chairs in the waiting area, trying to steady his nerves. He hadn't expected this to be easy, but nothing about this situation felt normal. The weight of the uncertainty hung over him like a storm cloud. Minutes passed, and finally, a door opened. A man in a dark suit walked out, clipboard in hand. He smiled when he saw Jason, extending his hand. "Jason, good to meet you. I'm Mr. Thompson, and I'm handling your case today. We've been expecting you." Jason stood up and shook the man's hand, trying to remain calm. "Nice to meet you, sir. Please come on in," Mr. Thompson said, leading him into a small conference room. We've got a lot to go over. Jason followed him inside, where two other people were already seated at the table. One was a woman with short black hair and glasses. The other a man who looked to be in his mid-30s, both of them looking at him expectantly. Jason took a seat across from them, trying to steady his breathing. Mr. Thompson sat down and began. We've reviewed your application, your transcripts, and the scholarship offer from Mr. James. Everything looks good on paper, but there's one issue we need to address. Jason felt a knot form in his stomach. He couldn't help but tense up. What issue? The woman with glasses spoke up. The tuition fees, Jason. While Mr. James' donation is very generous, the school still requires a certain amount to be paid before we can officially enroll you. The paperwork is taking longer than we anticipated. Until that's sorted, we can't finalize your place on the team. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. This couldn't be happening. He'd had hoped that LeBron's promise would be enough, but now it felt like it wasn't. So you're saying that if the paperwork isn't done, I can't play? Jason asked, his voice barely steady. The man nodded, his expression serious. Unfortunately, yes. The school requires more than just a verbal commitment. They need confirmation of the financial arrangements. Without that, you can't officially participate. Jason felt the ground beneath him shift. Was this all some kind of cruel joke? He'd have come here for a solution, but instead, it felt like more doors were closing on him. The woman added, but we're doing everything we can to expedite the process. You won't be kicked out of school, Jason. Your scholarship is secure, but it may take a little longer for the paperwork to go through. We'll notify you as soon as things are finalized. Jason leaned back in his chair, trying to absorb what they were saying. This was it, the moment of truth. LeBron had given him a chance, but now it was all about whether or not the school would back him up. If they didn't, he wouldn't be able to play, and without playing, he'd never be scouted. It was a vicious cycle. I don't get it, Jason said, his frustration building. LeBron said he'd cover everything. Why does it matter if the paperwork isn't done? Why does it have to be this complicated? Mr. Thompson's expression softened, but only slightly. I understand your frustration, Jason, but the school has to follow its policies. It's not about what LeBron has promised. It's about what's officially on record. Once the process is complete, everything will be in order. Just stay patient. Jason couldn't believe what he was hearing. All this time, he had worked so hard, only to be stopped by something as mundane as paperwork. It didn't seem fair. Is there anything I can do to speed this up? He asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Is there anyone I can talk to? The man with glasses shook his head. At this point, it's out of your hands. You just have to wait for the process to be completed. Jason could feel his anger building. How many times had he been told to wait, to be patient, only for things to fall apart? How many times had his dreams been put on hold because of circumstances beyond his control? He stood up, his fists clenched. I don't know if I can wait any longer, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. I can't afford to lose this chance. I can't go back to nothing. Mr. Thompson and the others exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, the woman spoke up. Jason, I know this is tough, but remember, you have something that most students don't. You have LeBron behind you. He's not going to let you down. Just trust the process. Jason stared at her, trying to hold back his frustration. I'm trying, he said, his voice tight, but it's hard when it feels like everything's slipping away. There was a long silence. Then Mr. Thompson nodded slowly. I understand, but you have to believe in yourself too. You got a future ahead of you, and you're closer than you think. Jason didn't say anything else. He turned and walked out of the conference room, the weight of their words following him. As he left the school, he tried to stay calm, to keep his thoughts from spiraling out of control. But the truth was, he was scared. Scared that this was all just a dream, one that would fade away the moment he woke up. And as he stepped outside into the chilly afternoon air, he couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get even more complicated. Would the paperwork be processed in time? Would he even get the chance to prove himself? But as he got into his car, something strange happened. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from an unknown number. Jason, this is LeBron. I'm checking in. Let me know how it went today. Jason's heart skipped a beat. LeBron had reached out to him. For the first time in days, he felt a flicker of hope. He quickly typed a response. It's not good. They said the paperwork is still pending. I don't know what to do. Moments later, a new message appeared. "Don't worry, Jason. I'll take care of it. Trust me. You've got this." Jason read the message again, a sense of calm washing over him. For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone in this fight. Jason couldn't help but stare at the message on his phone. "Don't worry, Jason. I'll take care of it. Trust me. You got this." LeBron James had personally reached out to him. The weight of those words settled into Jason's chest, filling him with a strange mixture of relief and disbelief. Could it be that easy? Could LeBron really fix everything? The thought that the most famous basketball player in the world was behind him made the whole situation feel different, as though it might somehow work out after all. He didn't waste any time. Jason immediately typed back, "Thank you, LeBron. I really appreciate this. I won't let you down." After sending the message, Jason sat there for a moment, staring out the windshield of his car, the weight of what had just happened slowly sinking in. LeBron had his back. The one thing that had seemed so impossible, playing college basketball and building a future, was now something that felt within reach. But then, Jason's phone buzzed again. And this time, it wasn't a message from LeBron. It was a call. His heart skipped a beat when he saw who was calling. His mom. "Hey, Mom," Jason answered, trying to sound upbeat despite the heavy thoughts weighing on him. "Jason, where are you?" His mom's voice was tight, anxious. "You're not home yet, and I've been trying to reach you." "I'm on my way back from the meeting," he said, swallowing. "It's not good, Mom. They said they can't confirm anything until the paperwork is cleared. I don't know if I can make the team. They're still waiting on the financials." A long pause followed. Jason could hear his mom taking deep breaths on the other end of the line. "Jason, I just got a call from the school," she said slowly. "They said they've been contacted about your scholarship. Someone high up is pushing for you. A huge donor is making sure everything goes through. I think LeBron got involved." Jason's pulse quickened. His mouth went dry. "What? Are you sure?" "Yes," she replied, her voice breaking slightly. "They said everything should be processed soon. We just need to stay patient. Honey, the admissions office is moving things along." Jason had to sit down. The news was almost too much to process. LeBron really was pulling strings behind the scenes. It felt like the impossible was happening. A superstar athlete, someone who had built an empire of his own, was stepping in to help a kid like him. For a moment, it didn't feel real. I don't know what to say. He really came through for me, huh?" "I guess he did," his mom replied, a tone of disbelief in her voice. "Jason, this is huge. You don't know what this means for our family. This might just change everything." Jason felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about their family, their future. His parents had been struggling for so long, and now, it seemed like there might be a way out. "I'll keep you updated, Mom. Don't worry, I'm going to make sure I do everything I can on my end," Jason said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'll head home now." When he hung up the phone, he sat still for a moment longer. The thought of LeBron's involvement kept playing over and over in his mind. It wasn't just that LeBron had made an offer. It was the fact that he was personally making sure Jason had every chance to succeed. Jason had always dreamed of meeting LeBron, of getting the opportunity to prove himself. But this was beyond what he had ever imagined. He took a deep breath, realizing that everything was suddenly in motion. With LeBron pushing things forward, the next steps were no longer uncertain. But there was still something eating at him, the nagging feeling that this new chance could just as easily slip away if he wasn't careful. Jason's mom was waiting for him. When he got home, she was pacing back and forth in the living room, her eyes scanning the door every time it creaked. "Jason, tell me what happened," she said, rushing over as he stepped through the door. "I spoke to the admissions office, and then LeBron reached out to me. He's making sure everything gets finalized. The school is moving quickly now. I think everything is going to be okay." His mom blinked, her hands frozen in midair. "LeBron, he's really helping you." "Yeah, he is," Jason said, trying to hide the excitement in his voice. "He told me not to worry. He's taking care of it. I think the financials will be cleared soon." "Oh my God, Jason," his mom whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "This is incredible. You have a chance. You have a real chance now." Jason smiled at his mom, feeling a rush of emotion. It had been a long time since he'd seen her so hopeful. She had been carrying so much, and now, it felt like there was finally light at the end of the tunnel. His phone buzzed again, this time with another message from LeBron. Jason, just spoke to the admissions office. I've made sure they're expediting your paperwork. You'll be good to go soon. Just keep your head in the game. Jason's heart raced. LeBron's words were like a promise, a reminder that things were finally starting to turn around. He showed his mom the message, and her face lit up. This is it, Jason. You have a chance to change everything. You've got to keep pushing. You can do this. Jason nodded, though part of him still felt unsure. There were so many things that could go wrong, so many hurdles to overcome. But with LeBron behind him, it felt like he could at least take the first step in the right direction. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Jason continued attending school, trying his best to stay focused on his studies, even as the pressure mounted. Every time he checked his phone, there was another update from LeBron, assuring him that things were moving forward. It was a relief, but also a reminder of how much was riding on this opportunity. Jason knew that he had to prove he was worth the faith LeBron had placed in him. And then one afternoon, as Jason sat in the cafeteria with his friends, his phone buzzed again. It was another message from LeBron. Jason quickly unlocked the phone, his eyes scanning the text. Congratulations, Jason. Your paperwork is finalized. The school has confirmed your spot on the team. You're officially part of the program. Jason's heart skipped a beat. It was official. The chance he had dreamed of, had nearly lost, was now his. He jumped up from his seat, a smile spreading across his face. His friends looked at him in surprise. Dude, what's going on? One of them asked, his eyes wide. Why are you freaking out? Jason started, but the words caught in his throat. I just got the news. I'm on the team. I'm really on the team. A loud cheer erupted from his table as his friends stood up to congratulate him. Jason's excitement was palpable, but even amid the celebration, he knew this was only the beginning. He was just one step closer to his dream, and now it was time to prove that he belonged. But even as his friends high-fived him, part of Jason couldn't shake the feeling that there were more challenges ahead. The road to success was rarely smooth, and now that he had a place on the team, he knew the hard work was just beginning. And as he walked out of the cafeteria, the future ahead of him was brighter than it had ever seen before. But would he be able to live up to it? Would he be able to handle the pressure? Jason didn't have the answers yet, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face whatever came next. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, Jason couldn't help but smile. This was only the beginning, and it felt like the start of something huge. But in the back of his mind, he still wondered what other challenges were waiting for him. Would LeBron's faith in him be enough to get him through the tough times ahead? But right now, Jason didn't need to worry about that. Today was his victory. Tomorrow would come with its own set of obstacles. And he would be ready. The days that followed were a blur of excitement and nervous anticipation. Jason's world had shifted overnight. The way of knowing he was officially part of the college basketball team felt surreal, but now he was facing a new kind of pressure. The reality of what he had to do next hit him hard. He was no longer just a kid with a scholarship. He was now a student athlete with a target on his back. He had to prove that he deserved this opportunity. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about making sure he didn't let LeBron down, making sure he didn't let his family down. And above all, it was about showing everyone who had supported him that he was worthy of their belief. The first few practice sessions were grueling. Jason could feel a difference in intensity. The drills were faster, the competition fiercer. The other players were good, really good. Some had been playing college ball for years, and they weren't about to hand him a spot on the court just because of LeBron's name. He had to earn it, just like everyone else. At first, Jason felt like an outsider. He was the new kid on the team, and the veteran players looked at him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. No one came right out and questioned him, but Jason could feel the unspoken challenge. They were waiting to see if he could really cut it. LeBron had set the bar high, and Jason knew he couldn't just coast on his name. He had to work harder than he ever had before. Every morning, Jason woke up at 5 a.m. to get in extra shots at the gym. He studied his playbook late into the night, memorizing plays, refining his footwork, and building his strength. His body ached, his muscles burned, but he didn't stop, not for a second. Still, doubt crept in. After a particularly tough practice, Jason was sitting on the bench, drenched in sweat, his head in his hands. He felt like he wasn't improving fast enough, like the gap between him and the other players was too wide to bridge. Maybe this was too much for him. Maybe he wasn't cut out for this after all. "You good?" a voice suddenly asked. Jason looked up to find his teammate, Marcus, standing in front of him. Marcus had been one of the first to welcome him to the team, and although he was one of the more experienced players, he hadn't treated Jason like a rookie. He had always given him tips and pointers during practice, even when the other players stayed quiet. "Yeah, just tired," Jason said, forcing a smile. "A lot to take in, you know." Marcus nodded, sitting down next to him. "Yeah, I get it. You're working hard, but you gotta be patient with yourself. It's not about being perfect right away. It's about getting better every day. Keep showing up. Keep grinding. That's how you make it." Jason looked at him, grateful for the encouragement. "Thanks. I don't want to let anyone down." "You're not gonna let anyone down," Marcus said with a grin. "You've got LeBron backing you up. That's a big deal. But at the end of the day, it's all on you. Don't try to be someone else. Just play your game." Jason nodded. He'd heard those words before from his coaches and mentors. But hearing them now from Marcus, someone who had been through it all, hit him differently. Maybe it wasn't about meeting everyone else's expectations. Maybe it was about believing his own potential and working hard every day to reach it. The next few days were better. Jason felt like he was getting the hang of things. His shot was improving, his speed on the court was getting faster, and he was starting to build real chemistry with his teammates. Every practice felt like a step forward, but there was one thing still weighing heavily on his mind: the pressure to stay on the team. The coach, Coach Harris, was known for being tough but fair. He had a reputation for being willing to give anyone a shot, but he expected results. Jason knew that no one was going to give him special treatment just because of LeBron's endorsement. He had to show the coach, and the rest of the team, that he deserved his place. It wasn't until the end of that week that Jason truly felt like he was beginning to find his rhythm. He had improved in every practice, but it wasn't until the team scrimmage that he felt the first real spark of confidence. Coach Harris had split the team into two groups for a scrimmage game, and Jason was put on the second-string team, which was where most of the newcomers played. The first string was expected to dominate. They were the seasoned players, the ones who had been together for years. But Jason was ready. The whistle blew, and the game began. The first few minutes were a blur of fast-paced action. Jason found himself a step behind at first, struggling to keep up with the other players. But as the game went on, something clicked. He got into his groove, anticipating the movements of the players around him, making smart passes, and taking open shots. In the final minute of the game, with the score tied, Jason found himself with the ball. He looked up at the clock, 10 seconds left. His heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment to prove that he belonged. He could feel the eyes of the entire team on him. His teammates were watching, waiting to see what he would do. The ball felt heavier in his hands as he dribbled to the top of the key, sizing up the defender in front of him. The clock ticked down. With a quick step to the right, Jason broke free of his defender, creating just enough space to take the shot. It felt like everything slowed down in that moment. He let go of the ball, watching it art through the air, feeling the weight of the moment. The buzzer sounded, and the ball swished through the net. The gym erupted into cheers. Jason stood frozen for a moment, his heart still racing. He couldn't believe it. He had just won the game. The entire team rushed toward him, slapping him on the back and lifting him into the air. "That's how you do it," Marcus shouted, his voice filled with excitement. Coach Harris smiled as he approached Jason, clapping him on the shoulder. "Nice shot, kid. You're starting to show what you've got. Keep that up, and you'll have a real shot at starting." Jason's breath caught in his throat. A starting position. It felt like a dream. "You earned it," Coach Harris said, giving him a nod of approval before walking away to talk to the rest of the team. Jason stood there for a moment, catching his breath, trying to let the weight of the moment sink in. He had done it. He had just taken a major step toward earning his place on the team and proving that he wasn't just LeBron's project. He was his own player. That night, Jason couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, replaying the game in his head over and over. It wasn't just the shot that made him proud. It was the feeling of finally fitting in, of finally earning his place among the other players. But even as he basked in the afterglow of his victory, Jason knew it wasn't over. This was just one moment, one game. There were still a million things he had to do, a million more hurdles to clear. The pressure would only get heavier from here. But for now, he let himself savor the victory. He had proven he belonged. And no matter what happened next, Jason knew one thing for sure. He was ready. The next morning, after the adrenaline of the game had worn off, Jason sat down at the kitchen table for breakfast, trying to shake the excitement from the night before. He hadn't even told his mom about the game yet. He wanted to keep it a surprise. But as he scrolled through his phone, something caught his eye. It was an article from a local sports news outlet. LeBron James' newest protege likes up college scrimmage with last-second game winner. The article was brief, but made it clear that Jason's shot had turned heads. It wasn't just about the game winner. It was about how he had played with confidence, how he had stepped up when the pressure was on. The article didn't just call him LeBron's prodigy. It called him a rising star in his own right. Jason couldn't help but smile. But as he put his phone down, a new message popped up. It was from LeBron. "Great job, Jason. I saw the game last night. Keep pushing. You're on the right track." Jason stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't just the shot that mattered. It was everything. The hours of hard work, the doubts he had fought through, and now, LeBron's unwavering support. This was only the beginning. Jason's phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a message from LeBron. His heart sank when he saw the notification. It was an email from the school's athletic department, marked urgent. He clicked it open with a sense of dread. Subject: immediate attention required. Scholarship status update. Jason's pulse quickened as he read through the email. It was a standard letter filled with all the usual disclaimers about academic requirements, student responsibilities, and eligibility. But the last line caught his attention. Due to unforeseen circumstances, there is a delay in finalizing your financial aid package. Until the matter is resolved, your status as a scholarship recipient is under review. Please contact the financial aid office immediately for clarification. Jason's stomach dropped. Not again. He had worked so hard to get here, and now, it felt like the rug was being pulled out from under him. The feeling of victory he'd had just the day before, after his game-winning shot, was quickly being replaced by a cold sense of uncertainty. He quickly dialed the number provided in the email, his fingers shaking slightly as he held the phone to his ear. After what felt like an eternity, a receptionist picked up. "Hello, this is the financial aid office. How may I assist you?" "Hi," Jason said, trying to steady his voice. "I just received an email about my scholarship. It says there's a delay. Can you help me understand what's going on?" The receptionist asked for his student ID number, and after a brief hold, she came back with an answer that made Jason's blood run cold. "There seems to be a discrepancy with your financial aid package," she explained. "Some paperwork is missing, and without it, your scholarship cannot be finalized. Unfortunately, this means that until the issue is resolved, we cannot guarantee your place on the team or your enrollment at the university." Jason's heart was pounding. The thought of losing everything, his chance at college basketball, his chance at a future, was too much to bear. "But I've been accepted, and I've already been in contact with the athletic department," Jason protested. "LeBron is involved. He's helping me with this. Surely there's something we can do." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "I understand, but the financial aid department can only work with the documentation we have. I recommend you contact your coach and the athletic department right away. They may be able to assist in expediting the process." Jason felt the walls closing in on him. He thanked the receptionist and hung up, his mind racing. What if this was the end of everything? What if, despite all his hard work, the scholarship and his dreams were slipping away? He wasted no time. He called Coach Harris, his voice shaking as he explained the situation. "Coach, I just got an email from the financial aid office. They said there's a problem with my paperwork and they're holding up my scholarship. I don't know what to do." There was a long pause. Then Coach Harris' voice came through the phone, calm but firm. "Jason, don't worry about this right now. We're going to handle it. This is just a bump in the road. I'll personally take care of it with the athletic department. You focus on what you do best, playing basketball. We've got your back." Jason exhaled, the tightness in his chest easing slightly. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," Coach Harris said. I've got a lot of influence around here. You've worked hard, and we're not going to let paperwork mess this up. Trust me, you'll be fine." But as Jason hung up the phone, doubt gnawed at him. What if the issue was too big to fix? What if he didn't have enough time? The season was fast approaching, and without the scholarship, he would have to drop out of school. The thought was almost unbearable. That afternoon, Jason's mind raced through a dozen worst-case scenarios. He had barely eaten lunch and hadn't even bothered to attend his classes. He was fixated on the one thing he couldn't control: his scholarship status. As evening approached, Jason sat at his desk in the dorm, staring at his phone, willing it to ring with good news. He was still trying to make sense of everything when a new notification appeared. LeBron James. Direct message. Jason's hands were trembling as he opened the message. "Hey Jason, just heard about the issue with your scholarship. Don't sweat it. I've made a call to the university. The financial aid department will be reaching out to you directly. I've got your back, and we're going to get this sorted. Keep your head in the game and keep working hard. I believe in you." Jason felt a wave of relief wash over him. LeBron had stepped in again. The simple words, "I believe in you," weren't enough to restore a sense of calm. He sat back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment to take it all in. LeBron's words were like a lifeline, pulling him back from the edge. Jason could feel the weight on his shoulders lifting, if only a little. As the night went on, Jason received another call, this time from the athletic department. It was the person he had been hoping to hear from, his financial aid counselor. "Jason," the counselor began, "I wanted to follow up on your situation. I understand there's been some confusion with your paperwork. I've been in touch with the athletic department and received some clarification. We've expedited your file, and everything should be processed shortly. Your scholarship status has been reinstated, and there's no longer an issue. You're good to go." Jason exhaled in relief. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. It was over. The nightmare was over. "Thank you. Thank you so much," Jason said, his voice cracking slightly. The counselor chuckled softly. "No problem. We're glad to have you here, Jason. Good luck with the season. You've got a bright future ahead." Jason hung up the phone, a wave of emotion rushing over at him. He wanted to scream, jump, and laugh all at once. For the first time in weeks, he felt like everything was finally falling into place. As he sat in the quiet of his dorm room, Jason pulled up LeBron's message one more time and read it again. He couldn't believe it. LeBron had used his influence to make sure everything worked out for him. Jason knew he wasn't just some lucky kid who had his life handed to him. He had fought for every opportunity he had, but LeBron's faith in him, his unwavering belief that Jason could make it, was something Jason would carry with him forever. He wasn't just playing for himself anymore. He was playing for the people who had believed in him, including LeBron. As the season approached, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about playing basketball. It was about proving that he belonged, not only to the team, but to everyone who had supported him. He couldn't let them down. Not now. Not ever. And with that thought, Jason knew that this was only the beginning. The challenges ahead would be just as tough. But he was ready. He had come this far, and there was nothing that could stop him now. Jason was ready for whatever came next, and when the first game of the season arrived, he was more than prepared. But as the season progressed, he would soon learn that no amount of preparation could prepare him for the real test that awaited him, a test that would push him to his limits, force him to confront his deepest fears, and ultimately change everything. But for now, the next chapter of his journey was waiting, and Jason was determined to make the most of it. The day of the first game of the season arrived with an electric buzz around campus. The gym was packed with fans, eager to see the new recruits in action. Jason could feel the energy in the air as he suited up with his teammates. It was a feeling unlike any other. This wasn't just another practice. This was the real deal. The lights of the arena were bright, and the crowd's roar grew louder as the team entered the court. Jason's heart raced. He had worked so hard to get here, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. The excitement was palpable, but so was the pressure. His eyes scanned the crowd as the announcer called out the names of the starting players. Jason wasn't in the starting lineup, but Coach Harris had made it clear that he was ready to be called on at any moment. His time would come. He had to be ready. LeBron had texted him earlier that day, a simple message to remind him of the importance of staying calm and focused. Enjoy this moment, but don't get lost in it. Play your game. You've earned this." Jason pocketed his phone as he took his seat on the bench. The opening tip-off was about to begin, and everything felt like it was moving in slow motion. The game started, and from the very first possession, it was clear that the competition was fierce. The opposing team was fast and skilled, pushing the ball down the court with lightning speed. Jason watched from the sidelines, taking in every movement, learning how his teammates interacted on the floor, seeing where he could fit in when his turn came. The first half flew by. The score was neck and neck, with both teams battling hard for every point. Jason was impressed by how the veterans played. Marcus, in particular, was everywhere. His defense was suffocating, and his passes were always on target. Jason could see why he was one of the team's star players. But the minutes ticked by, and Jason's nerves started to creep in. He hadn't been called off the bench yet, and he could feel the anxiety building. He knew Coach Harris had faith in him, but what if he wasn't ready? What if he didn't measure up? Finally, midway through the second half, the moment came. "Jason!" Coach Harris called out, waving him onto the court. Jason's heart skipped a beat. He jumped up and rushed to the scorer's table, trying to calm his racing pulse. He wiped his palms on his jersey as he took his place on the court. His legs felt shaky at first, but he knew this was his shot. This was what he had worked for. As he checked into the game, the arena's noise seemed to dim. All he could hear was the sound of his own breath and the rhythm of his heartbeat. His eyes focused on the ball as the point guard passed it to Marcus. The ball moved quickly down the court, and Jason found himself in position on the wing. Marcus, as if reading his mind, passed the ball to him. Jason caught it, squared up, and took a deep breath. He had a good look at the basket. He could hear his teammates yelling for him to shoot, but something inside of him froze. What if I miss? What if this is the moment I let everyone down? In the split second that his mind wavered, his defender closed in. Jason could feel the pressure mounting, but instead of taking the shot, he pivoted, trying to shake his man off. The defender stayed tight on him, and in a panic, Jason passed the ball to the open player at the top of the key, Marcus. The crowd groaned as the play broke down. Marcus fumbled the ball for a moment, but he recovered quickly and fired off a three-pointer. It missed, and the opposing team quickly grabbed the rebound. Jason could hear the frustrated voices of his teammates from across the court. As he hustled back on defense, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just blown his one opportunity. Coach Harris called a timeout soon after. The team huddled on the sideline, and Jason stood on the edge of the circle, feeling the weight of the mistake. He had let the team down. But then Coach Harris surprised him. "Jason," Coach said, his voice steady but firm, "come here." Jason stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the floor. "You've got potential," Coach Harris said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But you've got to trust yourself. You can't let the pressure get to you. You got the skills. But right now, you're second-guessing yourself. Play with confidence. You got this." Jason nodded silently, but inside, he felt a renewed sense of resolve. He wasn't going to let that one mistake define him. He had come too far for that. The game resumed, and soon after, Jason was back on the court. This time, his confidence was a little stronger. He was ready to take the shot, no matter what. Minutes passed, and the game remained tight. Jason's opportunity came again, this time with the ball in his hands as the team moved into the final minute. The score was tied, and this was it, the last possession. Jason wasn't thinking about the past mistakes anymore. He focused on the basket, on his teammates, on the game. As he dribbled towards the top of the key, he felt the defense close in. He didn't hesitate. This time, when the opening came, he took the shot. The ball left his hands with a clean flick of the wrist, and time seemed to slow down as it sailed through the air. Squish! The ball hit the net cleanly, and the crowd erupted into cheers. Jason stood there, stunned for a moment. He had just hit the game-winning shot. His teammates were jumping and shouting, rushing toward him to celebrate. Marcus, who had been the first to reach him, clapped him on the back. "That's how you do it." Jason couldn't help but laugh. The pressure, the doubts, the mistakes, it had all faded into the background. In that one moment, he had done exactly what he needed to do. As the final buzzer sounded, Jason's teammates crowded around him, lifting him off the floor in celebration. Coach Harris gave him a proud nod from the sidelines, a silent acknowledgement of how far he had come. Jason felt like he was floating. He had proven to everyone, and to himself, that he belonged. But more than that, he had learned something vital. Confidence wasn't just about making the shot, it was about trusting yourself, even when the stakes were high. As he walked off the court, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from LeBron. "I saw that shot, Jason. You're starting to find your rhythm. Keep it up." Jason smiled, his chest swelling with pride. This was only the beginning. He'd come so far, but the journey was just starting. It wasn't just about playing for a scholarship anymore. It wasn't even just about basketball. It was about proving to himself that he could overcome anything: pressure, doubt, setbacks, and still rise to the challenge. And for the first time in a long time, Jason felt ready for whatever was next.